Elizabeth, it is good to see you. We already have questions coming in directly for you, so let's get right into it, because I know always my time with you is limited. We have a question from Danny, and this is the central question. This is the central question, because I asked yesterday, it was more introductory. She seemed to talk about the love that she had in this relationship with Sean Combs, how she met him in 2020, the relationship began in 2021, started to introduce her into these voyeuristic sexual episodes. I wasn't hearing force, fraud, coercion for sex trafficking, right? And using those methods to induce somebody into commercial sex acts. So the question now is, from Danny, this is a question for Elizabeth, did Jane testify to any coercion she faced from Diddy? The floor is yours, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to answer that. I feel like we're still kind of getting into the depths of more of her direct testimony, whereas right away with Cassie, for example, it was you could kind of make the dots and connect the dots. Sorry, I cannot speak today. You can connect the dots a little bit easier with Cassie's testimony. For example, you have the Intercontinental Hotel incident, the surveillance video. But as far as just coercion specifically to Jane, it's kind of hard to really tell at this point. There were times while she was on the witness stand today, for example, that she would just break down into a lot of tears to the point that AUSA Maureen Comey was like, do you need to take a break? Are you okay? Do you want to keep going? And Jane just continued to push through. But she got really emotional at points when it came to just how long that these freak-offs would last, to the point where she would be so tired that she would request or kind of give a look to her partner, as she calls him, but that look was to Diddy or to Puffy or Sean Combs, as she also calls him on the witness stand. But she was kind of explaining that there were times where she'd be really exhausted from a freak off or a hotel night or a debauchery night, whatever they call it. And then Diddy would want more escorts to come. So when they were done with one escort, that escort would leave, then another escort would come, that escort would leave, then another escort would come into the hotel room, and then that escort would leave. And so she did have points today where it was very emotional. But as far as force, fraud, and coercion, it's kind of hard to tell, mainly because Jane a lot of the times was like, I did it to please him. I did it to make him happy. I knew these were things that turned him on, and I just wanted to make sure that he was happy. I would give him massages. I would watch or put on his favorite show. I would cook for him after these hotel nights or freak-off sessions. And so it's a pretty gray area right now, but I think that during the direct, which is going to continue until 5 p.m. today, that somewhere, some point, maybe the dots will be connected a little bit more than what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, and I'm going to talk about it later. You know, there were aspects of it where she talks about, throwing up and then being forced to engage in these sex acts, her crying, him being dismissive. Then there's problems, like she still wanted to be in his arms. She's calling him sweet, that it seems like he didn't force her to have sex with one sex worker that was, sweating. But I think a lot of it goes to transporting her and sex workers for the purpose of sex work. So that's, I think count 5 in the indictment, transportation to engage in prostitution. Here's a great question. After yesterday, when Diddy got in trouble for allegedly nodding at the jury during cross-examination of a witness, we got a question here from Shady Nasty. What is Diddy's demeanor like in court today listening to Jane testify?
Well, Diddy at the defense table is doing kind of what he normally does, minus kind of the nodding along with the testimony and things of that sort. So for the most part, I do see him at times jotting notes down, passing them off to his attorneys. During sometimes the sidebars, I see him kind of turn around, look at his family members, for example, seeing his mom inside the courtroom and waving hello to her. But as far as just giving looks to the jurors specifically and nodding along, I haven't seen much of that today. And so it might have resonated what the judge said to Diddy yesterday, right before we had went to the lunch break, just yesterday around the same time. And so as far as what we're seeing, it's not as intense as it was yesterday, but I think after the judge's words to him, I think he realized, okay, I gotta chill out on doing the nodding.
So, he's not looking at the jurors, because we got a question here from RSS. He's not nodding at the jurors. Is he looking at the jurors? Are the jurors looking at him? Because this is important testimony. I guess the question is, what are the jurors doing when they're listening to the testimony of Jane?
Yeah, so from what I see, and I did try to get a better seat for you guys today so I could kind of really see more of like the second row, the third row. I can't see the first row as much as I normally could from where I normally sit. But as far as what I did see from the jurors today, I did see them either looking directly at Jane while she's testifying, especially during those moments where she got super emotional and she began crying. And then I also saw them looking at AUSA Maureen Comey too while she was kind of doing her lines of questioning. And so there were times where you could see jurors looking at Maureen Comey, then looking at Jane on the witness stand, or they're just laser focused on Jane, or some of them I've seen are just jotting down a bunch of notes. I have seen a lot of notes because there were exhibits that were shown and a lot of exhibits that were shown. Unfortunately, during Jane's testimony, we in the gallery and even those in the overflow room cannot see it, but we're hearing a lot of descriptions of them. For example, the many lines of escorts and the escorts photographs that the jurors saw today and that Jane saw today too. But from what I could see of them, really it seems like they're paying very close attention. I didn't see any outwardly kind of facial expressions as far as maybe being confused or anything like that. Really, they're just kind of like, I really kind of want to know myself what's going on in their minds sometimes, because sometimes they just have a very stone cold face kind of going on while they're listening to a lot of graphic testimony.
By the way, did you hear that recording that was played in court today regarding, I think you could hear Combs, Jane, and this guy named Don, right? What was that recording?
Yes, well, let me get to that part of my notes because.
Well, I'll tell you what. As you get to your notes, as you get to your notes, I will give you another good question for you. This is from I Do Voodoo 1. Elizabeth, I forgot what skincare you use. What shorthand program are you using? You rock. So if you want to answer that, or you want to answer the more serious question about the recording as you get to your notes.
I mean, I can always answer about skincare. It's toner, it's retinol, it's serum, it's face mask, it's Vaseline lip moisturizer, and it's a lot of water. So
and
that's
it's working.
The easy question.
And it's
I
working.
love answering those types of questions. Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, when that question was posed to me yesterday, I was kind of like, is it because my skincare looks good, or is it because I'm sweating out here because it's so hot? But we're okay. And I found that point in my notes, so I can tell you guys all about what we did here as far as this particular iPhone recording. And so it was a conversation that was recorded by, I believe it was Diddy recording this on an iPhone, because that's kind of what they did during these hotel sessions and these hotel nights. And so one of the conversations was recorded about Jane wanting the escorts to wear a condom. And so when we first hear the exhibit, because again, we can't see it, but we can hear this audio, the jurors can see this, so you can hear voices. It's all jumbled up. I'm kind of like, what is this that we're hearing? And Jane said it was herself on this recording, Dawn and Diddy on this recording. And she said during this video, she was asking Dawn to put on a condom, and Diddy said, what are you doing? What do you want? And so then Maureen Comey replays it again, and she kind of takes it piece by piece as far as what was being said. So Jane said, I think they're in the chair, and she was referring to as condoms. And then Diddy said something along the lines of, you were just taking that D if you don't touch yourself right now. And then Jane was explaining, I understand that my request was going to be denied. And then Maureen Comey asked, well, why did you need permission from Mr. Combs for an escort to have sex with your body? And then Jane's getting pretty emotional here. And then Jane herself responded, I don't know, I'm still trying to process everything. And then there was an objection from the defense. They had a sidebar. And then when they came back from this sidebar, Maureen Comey asked again, why didn't you insist that Dawn wear a condom? And Jane responded, I didn't want to disappoint my lover. He wouldn't be in a good mood or satisfied with the night if she were to continue asking this. And she said for the most part, Diddy preferred for the escorts to not be wearing rubbers or condoms when they're having sex with her. She said that he doesn't like seeing these on the escort's body. And so it was just an interesting kind of recording to kind of hear out in court. At first I was like, what are these words? Like, I really couldn't comprehend it. But as they broke it down, I was kind of like, oh, okay, now I can see where they're kind of going with this a little bit.
So, got a great compliment just came in from Donnie Z TV. Thank you so much for this super chat comment. Jesse, you and Elizabeth rock, so thank you so much. Very kind of you to say. Okay, we did have a question here from Shop Girl, and I don't know if you were in court for this. We saw reporting about it. What was the extent of Diddy's aggravation when he was obviously angry speaking to his attorneys. There was something reported about that. I think the jury had been excused maybe on a break, and he was quite animated speaking with his attorneys. Did you see anything like that?
I didn't see anything like that. I might have been a point where I stepped out to use the restroom, but I mean, wow, I'm just hearing this for the first time. So I didn't see it in person. So unfortunately, I can't answer too much of your question. I think I might have just gone off to the restroom, I guess, when that moment might have happened.
So Elizabeth, would you agree with me and pick out the points? Do you feel that from today's testimony and a little bit from yesterday, they are solidifying transportation to engage in prostitution, where Diddy is accused of transporting sex workers and alleged victims for the purposes of prostitution, for the purposes of sex work? You don't need force, fraud, or coercion necessarily. It's more of a straightforward charge. Were there some highlights today that you say they got it in the bag for that?
I think so. For example, when we were seeing just the number of escort exhibits, we saw a man named Don. He was an escort that Jane and Diddy had used. And the last time she saw Don, this particular escort, I thought it was interesting. The last time that she had sex with him, and during these hotel nights, even though sometimes they didn't always happen in hotels, the last time was August of 2024. So like just last month, not last month, oh my goodness, last year, but a month before Diddy was arrested. Then there was an exhibit shown to the jury and to Jane. It was Paul the escort, and that Paul was used from 2021 until July of 2024. Jane thought that he was a personal trainer because he actually trained Diddy, but he also worked for Cowboys for Angels. But I think the sticking point here is that she saw him in Los Angeles. She saw him in Miami. She saw him in Turks and Caicos. There was Leo, the escort, or also referred to as the Italian. She met him in 2022 on her birthday. The last time she saw him was in 2023, and that they would use him every so often, but she saw him in Los Angeles. There was an unnamed escort that she was shown an exhibit of, met him in 2021, and this was the escort that she said that she was repulsed by him, that he was super sweaty, he had smelled, she was hesitant with him, and that he was used in just different places too. So I think if anything, that the prosecution does have that working for them. I think it is still kind of up in the air as far as count 4 goes when it pertains to sex trafficking with Jane's specific count. But as far as just transportation to engage in prostitution, I think Maureen Comey is really kind of making great points here and there where it's like, well, where did you see this individual? Was it in Miami? Was it in Vegas? Was it in Los Angeles? And even for Dawn, for example, one of the first escorts that Jane had booked on her own, she was explaining that he was someone that they always flew out from Atlanta to wherever they were, either it be in Los Angeles or other places, and that they would be arranged, the travel as far as Dawn was concerned, would either be arranged by Jane herself, but she would be reimbursed by Diddy, or it'd be by Diddy's travel agent who would get everything going as far as making the flights for him and then flying him out from where his home was in Atlanta, Georgia, over to wherever Diddy and Jane were.
Just to clarify here, Elizabeth, what are the points you think the defense is going to jump on? And when I say that is, I'm reading the transcript, and there's certain parts of her testimony that I don't think are great for the prosecution. You know, I mentioned it before, but the idea of there was this sweaty individual, and it doesn't seem, unless I'm wrong, Combs forced her to actually continue sexual relations with him, that she still talks like a loving relationship with Sean Combs, you know, that she wanted to be in his arms. She just wanted to be with him. She loved him. I mean, she was dating him up until his arrest in 2024, that she was the one who was writing sexually explicit messages to these sex workers, seemingly, you know, she says it was at Sean Combs' request. But are there certain avenues, certain points in her testimony today where you feel the defense is going to focus on, or you feel there are openings for the defense to exploit?
I think the defense is definitely going to ask Jane how she feels about Diddy today as far as whether or not she still has feelings for him. Because I think there are times during her direct testimony where you can kind of feel like she is a little apprehensive. I don't know if it's about testifying in general or that she may have kind of conflicted feelings where she was seeing this person up until September of 2024. They had a long a long relationship beginning all the way in 2021, not as long as Cassie and Diddy were together as far as that 11-year on and off period, but I think they're going to ask her, what are your thoughts on Diddy? Do you still love him? I think they're also going to ask her, you initiated some of these hotel nights. You were the one sending these messages to these entertainment or pornography stars, and you were the one making sure that you were bringing them to wherever you were. Were you a willing participant? Did you say no, or are you just saying that because the government called you? I feel like they're really going to poke holes in her story, possibly use her text messages against her as they've done kind of with other witnesses, and possibly ask her, well, you were kind of getting something out of this, and that was her rent being paid for. Again, that rent being $10,000 a month, which I did the math wrong yesterday. I said it was 8 times more than my rent. It's 5 times more than my rent, but still, that's a lot of money to pay for rent for somebody else. But as far as just where the defense is going to poke holes, I think they kind of have a lot possibly working for them. I think one interesting thing, Jesse, is that there was a moment yesterday where the judge was asking, can everyone stay a little bit later? Because they know that Jane has to get off the stand by Thursday because she has to make a flight. But Alexandra Shapiro stood up and was like, I can't stay late. And she was talking about it yesterday. She's like, I can't stay late today because I have this other event. But I really want to stay here for all of Jane's testimony because we believe she's one of the most important witnesses in the case. So I think that the defense knows just how important Jane's testimony is. But I think they definitely kind of have a lot working for them when they do eventually get to cross-examining her.
And by the way, if anybody has any questions for Elizabeth as we have our time with her, please submit them right now. Do you know if who's there on Diddy's side today? Is his family there?
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of family members today. So, for example, we're seeing his sons, including, I almost said Tristan, but it's Justin and Christian. I'm sorry, everyone. I know today is Friday, and I'm feeling the Friday vibes. But also, Janice Combs was inside that courtroom today, too. His sister Keisha made an appearance today in court. She's been in there. Diddy's PR rep is in there. I think not on Diddy's side or anything, but I think notably someone in the courtroom today was Doug Wigder, who is Cassie's attorney. But as far as those who are who are on Diddy's side today, one of his really good friends and music producer, Charlucci, was there, and his youngest daughter's mother was in there in that courtroom too. So he has a lot of support kind of working on his side today, a little bit more support than maybe we've seen for other days. But as far as just his daughters, we haven't seen them since week 1 of trial. So I think that's something kind of interesting. But he does still have his support system there, including probably one of his favorite people, his sons and his mother there, and his sister too.
There's always a lot of conversation about what happened yesterday and what exactly he was doing with respect to the jury. And, the question is if he's nodding towards them. This is a guy who has been accused for the last 3-4 weeks of intimidating people, witnesses, alleged victims, assistants. So was he potentially trying to intimidate the jury? It also could be maybe he was feeling the high of a successful cross-examination of a key witness, Brianna Bongolan, which we could talk about as well. But we get this question that came in from Ashley Glass. It's for you. If yesterday he was nodding at the jury, isn't that suspicious to him getting to a juror? Could they be compromised by Diddy? So I guess the question is there anything that you're observing here, Elizabeth, that would suggest 2 questions? Anything that looks like the jury might be siding with the defense, whether it's any kind of cross-examination that you've seen so far? Are they nodding? Are they looking? Are they responding positively to the defense? And number 2, do they look like they're affected by Diddy's presence or behavior in that courtroom?
Well, I don't know if they're necessarily affected by his behavior, because I thought after yesterday, after the judge kind of admonishing Diddy, I thought maybe there would be kind of a change in maybe facial expressions as far as the jurors not kind of looking his way. But I think because of the way the layout of the courtroom is, you can't help but kind of look over in that way or anything like that. But as far as just kind of him looking at the jurors, and let me just say, he doesn't just look at the jurors, he looks at everybody in the gallery too. There are moments where even us on the press side, he does make eye contact with us. And myself, who's not a juror on this case, I myself find that kind of intimidating. So I can only imagine kind of how the jurors are feeling when they're getting kind of looks from the defendant himself. And I'm also wondering, as far as just him nodding along, it was something, again, that he was doing I think, a little bit longer than when the judge kind of pointed it out. He did this for other witnesses while they were on the witness stand too. But taking back to the point of whether or not the jurors that I could see necessarily agreeing with the defense, or maybe that it got to them, I'm not sure. I remember, I think it was Daniel Phillip who was testifying, or it might have been the Punisher who was testifying, where I did see one juror kind of nodding along to, and I believe the attorney who cross-examined both of those men was Xavier Donaldson, kind of nodding along to his line of cross-examination. But even as far as today goes, which we haven't gotten to the cross, it's still under the direct, so the prosecution's still asking those questions. I haven't seen much of a reaction from them, but they're really kind of hard to read sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, are they really interested? Sometimes I'm like, are they jotting notes down pertaining to testimony? Are they possibly writing their own grocery list down? Because when you're inside that courtroom for hours on end listening to this really graphic stuff, sometimes I'm wondering, like, are they really paying attention? But from what I can see, and from what the judge has even kind of complimented on, is it seems that everyone is paying attention to what's going on inside the courtroom.
Got one more question for you. This is from Jonathan Berry. Who is coming up after Jane, Elizabeth?
I do not know who's coming up after Jane. I'm very curious to see. I think a lot of us are possibly wanting to hear from somebody that we've been hearing a lot about, and that being KK or Christina Koram. But the government hasn't given any indication if she'll take the stand, and if she does take the stand, when that'll be. But I do think what the government is gearing up for is just their summary witness to eventually take the stand, and that person's going to really kind of wrap up everything together, probably show some demonstrative exhibits as far as just these different charts and how the escorts were flown out on certain days and all of that stuff. So I think for sure we're getting kind of, possibly, maybe, depending on how you look at it, close to the end of the government's case, but I don't want to put words in their mouth just in case we see maybe 20 more witnesses down the line, and I don't want y'all to get mad at me when that happens.
No one will ever get mad at you. Don't you know that by now, Elizabeth? Elizabeth, thank you so much. Great reporting as always. Lot to break down here. We're going to take your questions. I'll allow Elizabeth to jump back into the courtroom. Okay.